So I would kind of categorize it as two things. There's your technical knowledge of the area that you're leading in, and then your leadership skills. So for me, in particular, probably, because our field is so broad, acquisition is extremely broad, there's many things that you can do in acquisition. And I spent quite a bit of time in acquisition workforce as opposed to awarding lots of contracts. At the same time, I love people, love leading, always wanted to be in the number one position. Grew up that way, grew up in family business, where we led numerous family businesses and still do today. So I would say for me it would have been maybe if I had spent a little bit more time on the awarding contracts and the technical aspects of contracts. But what you'll find, and this is something that you'll need to leverage when you get into the senior executive services, you're not alone. So you've got to find people that complement your skills. And Greg and I were talking about this earlier today, and Greg will have tons of stories about this, but you're never going to be holistically perfect, or you should strive for that. But in the areas where you may be a little bit weak, that's where you bring in people to complement you.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Nick. Yeah, for me, it's just, and I was kind of lucky because I took a class, getting back to the formal training, I took a class real early in my career that was just really a shock. They have this crazy little game you play, and in the game, you're on an airplane, it crashes in the desert, you're there with everybody at the table, you're all in the desert, and you have to decide what things are you going to take with you in order to survive, and I can't remember what it's called. But I was sitting in this room, and I was at a table with a bunch of people of all different cultures, races, ages, and there was a table next to me of all military guys, white male guys. They finished the exercise very, very quickly. We fought and fought and fought forever, and it turned out they would have died in the desert because they did not have the diversity at the table. And what I learned very early on is that you've got to load up your management team with different perspectives and then listen to them. And I was fortunate. I learned that at a very early age. I always had a very diverse workforce and always really, really benefited from it.
We wanted to flip to see who would take that, but really, all that is an environmental factor. When you're in government, you're there to do good government. And if you're really any kind of a leader at all, you're going to be able to navigate. What's more challenging is personality. So it's really not Republican or Democrat. I mean, you're going to do good contracting, right? You're going to provide customer service. You're going to adhere to policy to make sure nobody crosses any lines. You're going to get a good deal. That has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. On the other hand, when you get a challenging personality, because there are changes in people which happen with changes in administrations, and even when there is an administration that stays, that can be a little bit challenging. But I don't think about it at all. I just continue to lead in the best manner, and that usually it works out.
Yeah, I think that's a great young man's answer. Since I came into government when Richard Nixon was president, basically as a civil servant, you serve the president. I remember when I was being interviewed for the job at Homeland Security, the question that was asked of me is, did I support the president? And my answer was, I support every president. There are generalizations, however. Republicans tend to be more business-like and less humanly oriented. They're more quick to riff. They're more quick to be much better business people, less interested in the human side of life. The Democrats, on the other hand, these are just generalizations, tend to be very, very people-oriented, not always the best leaders, not always the best managers. And I say that as a general observation. I served, faithfully to all administrations, but just in general, the Jimmy Carter era, everybody had Post-its all over the wall. The place looked like a dorm room. Every era has its kind of signal that it sends through the organization, and it's just been an observation of mine. It's a generalization, probably doesn't apply all the time, but that's an old man's answer. So.
Actually, the same principles apply. It wasn't really procurement specific. Leadership is never procurement specific. We love the profession of procurement because we've been around it. I'm in it. But in terms of leadership and aspiring into the SES, the core is the same regardless of the profession, and that is you should. There are some training blocks that you can check. You would love to get into an SES candidate development program. Outside of that, you need to get into supervisory positions. You need to do things where you're showing you're being collaborative and leading people, and you need to take on the tough technical assignments as well.
Yeah, I mean, just for me, I just always had that gene in me that, if I was reading about the Civil War, I mean, there's this, Robert E. Lee, he leads that charge at Gettysburg. He takes a tremendous defeat, and he rides up and down the line telling his men it was his fault. That's a leadership lesson. So you can look at all these leadership lessons, and if you're watching TV or something or a movie, and you can see great leaders, bad leaders, there's a certain gene about it, and if you have that gene, no matter what profession you go into, you'll do very, very well. And I just noticed that when I watch a show or something, I'm watching leaders at work. I'm not watching the plot as much. I just have always been, whether it's James T. Kirk or McGarrett 5-0 or whatever, I'm always watching what are those leadership things that they're doing when they're trying to lead a team of people. And it tends to be inclusive. It tends to be tough love. It's giving candid feedback to people. It's not tolerating mediocrity. It's never criticizing the performer, but always the performance. It's all those things that you kind of learn over the years that I think lead to it. I think most of you in this room probably have it, or you wouldn't be here.
Okay, that is a tremendous question, and I was having a conversation with somebody here just before we started. And so here's an interesting notion for everybody in this room. You guys are extremely bright. You have 40,000 members who are on, what is it? On Gov Loop. Apparently you bounce questions, you can send questions out, and you can solve problems and big issues. Today I was somewhere, and there was another young government leader, maybe not part of this group, who told me, if we could just fix the DHS procurement system, if we could just fix it up, I'm telling you, we could spend a lot more time with our customers, we could do a lot more neat things as opposed to spending all this time working in these disparate systems. I think here's the solution, because in our normal channels, the solution's not coming fast enough. And that's what you're really alluding to. And it's the same thing in a lot of things in America, actually, like our K through 12 education. We almost need, so if our plane is going like this, we almost need you guys, bright, the next generation who is exponentially smarter than my generation.
And where's this headed?
And so we need you to have a parallel path and figure some things out. Somebody was talking to me about Google. There's Google this, Google that. Figure it out. Figure the solution out and propose it as a group, as a 40,000 strong group. And I know somebody's going to do this. So, somebody is working on everything every day while we go to bed. So I'll give you this example. When I grew up, there used to be self-serve and full-serve gas. Now there's no more full-serve gas. Now I will tell you that the person who did the full-serve probably was thinking, okay, I'm going to get a quarter more next year. I'm going to get 50 cents more next year, and then boom, gone. The next thing to go will be the cashiers in all of the grocery stores. Now, why is that? It's because somebody's thinking about this stuff while we go to bed at night, just thinking the same old is going to happen. And so I would challenge this group and all of people of this, it's going to happen. Somebody's going to figure out K through 12 better than we do here, and they're not going to have to bother with all the unions and the teachers and everything and appeasing everybody. They're going to figure it out, and I would like to see it happen in this country. So similarly, when it comes to government and so you come into, what am I doing here? I want you to come into government, but I also want the same change that you want. And how do you make that change when we're still flying the plane like this? You've almost got to do it in parallel. So fantastic question, and I'm going to put the challenge on you because you guys are you're the next generation, you are exponentially smarter, you will figure it out.
Yeah, does that mean I should not have bought the stock in Blockbuster? Is that what you're trying to is that what you're trying to tell me, Nick? You know, it's a great question. I would just tell you a little story, and the bottom line is be vigilant. Years ago, there was a GS-12 young lady working for the Food and Drug Administration. They were trying to pass a drug called thalidomide. She basically said it was going to harm an entire generation. Her bosses basically said they didn't want to listen to her. They basically poo-pooed her. She fought. She got it banned in the United States. It was used in England. Whole generation of kids born without arms and legs. You know, just be vigilant and push.
If the number of questions are any sign of your leadership capability, you guys are real leaders. So thank you for all the questions. In terms of measures, you rattle off a bunch of measures. I think at the end of the day, you know, you always look for efficiency measures, you always look for effectiveness measures, but really, you know, in plain English, it goes back to the formula sort of that I said. You've got to be serving the customer, so that's one. The customer has to be producing something that delivers on the mission, and then alongside that, you have to be getting a good deal and you have to be able to prove it. And that's really kind of the formula. Those are really the metrics that I look at.
Yeah, it is a really good question. There are a lot of things. I mean, just very, very simplistically, there were always four things that we measured. We measured business results, just basically counting the things that went through. We measured employee satisfaction, because you cannot satisfy a customer if you have unhappy employees. We measured customer satisfaction, where we actually went out to our customers to see how well we're doing. And then we would actually go and measure industry satisfaction with us, because ultimately we are dealing with the industry. And in that process, we would oftentimes find out what best practices some agencies were using that we could learn from. So there's always those four things. But having said that, you have the entire swirl that you have to manage. You've got to have good relationships, and you cannot irritate anyone. You've got to have good relations with GAO, with the IG, with the media, with the Hill, with every stakeholder that can hurt you. You have to have great relationships with, because the minute you take on any one of those in that wheel, they will be the one that really works overnight or overtime to harm you. So, but it's a great question. There's a lot of metrics involved there.